Welcome to a chilling collection of stories from the heart of Japan, all centered around one of the country's most beloved pastimes, karaoke. These aren't your standard karaoke memories, though. These stories are real-life experiences that delve into eerie, supernatural, and weirdo encounters that have taken place in karaoke rooms. For those unfamiliar, karaoke in Japan is a unique experience compared to what you might know from Western settings. In Japan, karaoke isn't about singing in front of a crowd in a bar full of strangers. Instead, you and your friends rent a private room, fully equipped with a karaoke machine, microphones, and often a menu full of drinks and snacks. It's intimate, fun, and provides a space where you can sing your heart out without judgment. But in this cozy privacy, something unsettling can happen. As you'll soon discover in these stories, the isolation can make you wonder if you are truly alone in the room. In Western karaoke, you might deal with stage fright. In Japan, you might be dealing with spirits that have a chilling connection to the land or buildings that host these karaoke parlors, or strangers who might just want to take advantage of how isolated you are. Now, if you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more scary stories you likely haven't heard. I love karaoke in Japan so much, which is why I wanted to pick this as a subject. And since today is a special day, it's my birthday, I'd love to invite you to celebrate with me. Why not share a virtual beer with me and tell me in the comments, what's your favorite song to sing at karaoke? Cheers to that. Here comes the bells. This isn't exactly a classic horror story, but more of a disturbing experience that still gives me the chills. I'm not really used to sharing stories like this, so if there are any mistakes or awkward parts, just please overlook them. So this happened when I went to karaoke with a close friend of mine. It was during summer break, and we both happened to have a completely free day, which was rare. We decided to make the most of it. Let's go to karaoke, hit the arcade, and just have fun. That was the plan, an all-out day of fun with no restrictions. At the time, we were in our final year of junior high school, so finding time to hang out was always tough because of exam prep. So when we finally got a break, we went all out, spent way too much at the arcade, then blew more money on cute knickknacks at a random store. It was one of those carefree days where nothing could go wrong. To finish it off, we went to karaoke and started singing our hearts out. Everything was great. Us junior high school girls were laughing, belting out our favorite songs, and just having a blast for about an hour, when all of a sudden we heard a loud thudding noise. Someone started pounding on our door. We froze, mid-song, completely caught off guard. The door was made of frosted glass, so we couldn't clearly see. But when we looked over, we saw a man, probably in his 50s, plastered against the glass, staring straight at us. And I mean staring. His face was expressionless, his eyes were wide, and he was just standing there, staring at us through the door. It was beyond creepy. The weirdest part, he didn't even try to come in. He could have done if he wanted to, because the doors in that karaoke place didn't lock. He just stood there, glued to the door. We exchanged confused glances, both of us wondering, who the hell is this guy? What does he want? It didn't feel right to stop singing, so we awkwardly kept the music going, hoping he'd leave. But he didn't, even as the backing track to the next song started up. Then another song, then another. He just stayed there staring at us. It was the kind of stare that makes your skin crawl. After what felt like forever, I finally had enough. I reached for the phone in the room to call the staff. But as soon as I started to dial, the guy moved. Instead of walking away, he pressed his face even closer to the glass. He cupped his hands over his eyes like a pair of binoculars and leaned in further, almost as if he was trying to get a clearer look at us. His breath fogged up the glass, and then he started whispering something under his breath that I couldn't make out. It was creepy as hell. At this point, we're seriously freaked out. I picked up the phone receiver, ready to call for help, but before I could, the man suddenly backed away and disappeared down the hallway. It was like he vanished into thin air. Just as we were starting to relax, I noticed something terrifying. The guy had been holding a large pair of scissors in his hand the entire time. I could only just make them out through the frosted glass, but it was clear that's what they were. That's when I knew we needed to get out of there. We waited about 30 minutes to make sure he was gone, and then we bolted out of the room. Both of us were completely drained, and though we had more time left to hang out, we didn't want to stay. We just went straight home, feeling shaken and uneasy. And that's it. We never really found out who that guy was, or why he was there, but the sight of him standing there, staring through the glass, thinking about those scissors in his hand, still creeps me out to this day. I'll never know what his intentions were or why he decided not to open the door, and I think I'm actually fine not knowing that. This is my first time sharing a scary experience, but something happened last week, and I can't shake it off, so I thought I'd write about it. Last week I decided to go do some karaoke by myself. There's this place near my apartment, which the first and second floors of a building are dedicated to karaoke rooms, so it's super convenient. I went there at about 4 p.m, hoping to get a room with the DAM system. Hi, Jay here. When you go to karaoke, you can pick between systems such as Joy Sound and DAM. DAM is the best for Western songs, in my opinion. Each system has a different variety of songs though. Back to the story. When I asked the young girl at the counter for a DAM room, she went quiet for a moment. I assumed the rooms were full because of the time of day, but instead of saying anything, she just disappeared into the back. I could overhear her talking to what sounded like her manager, and after a brief discussion, she came back and led me to a room. Nothing seemed too weird until she said something that stood out. "If you need anything, please come to the front desk." Now, I've been karaoke plenty of times, and I've never heard a staff member say something like that before. Usually you just pick up the phone that's in the room or use the touchpad to order drinks or food. I didn't really understand it at the time, but wow, now I do. She led me to room 28, which was all the way at the back on the second floor. As soon as I walked in, I felt something was off. The room was way too spacious for a solo karaoke setup, and it had a massive window on one side. Now, most karaoke rooms I've been to don't even have windows, so I thought, hey, maybe this is a special room, and I was feeling pretty lucky. I grabbed the mic and I started singing. Everything was normal till around 5 p.m. That's when things started to get weird. Out of nowhere, the remote, that was working fine the whole time, stopped responding. No matter what buttons I pressed, I wouldn't send the song requests to the system. Normally, if there's something blocking the signal between the remote and the machine, it won't work. But as far as I could tell, there was nothing in the way. It was just not working. Frustrated, I decided to manually input the songs by walking up to the machine itself. I kept singing, trying to brush off the weird vibes. The room had a great view actually. I could see this wide open countryside outside the window, just fields and mountains with the sunset painting everything in a beautiful orange glow. It was so peaceful. And for a moment, I forgot about the remote, and I just admired the view while humming along to my song. But then, while I was singing, I forgot the lyrics to the song. You know how sometimes you just kind of blank out. So I turned to look at the screen where the lyrics are displayed, and that's when I saw her. There was a woman standing directly in front of the TV screen with her back facing me. She wasn't there when I last checked. It was so sudden and so out of place that I froze on the spot. I couldn't move. I couldn't even process what I was looking at. In moments like that, you just don't know what to do. My brain was screaming at me not to let her turn around, not to make eye contact. So I just stood there, paralyzed. The thing is, the exit was right next to the TV. That meant that if I wanted to leave, and I really did want to leave, I had to pass her. But she was standing right in the way, and I didn't dare get any closer. Time passed, I'm not sure how long. The song ended, and the room fell into a dead silence. My heart was pounding, and I could feel sweat dripping down my back. That's when the phone in the room rang, signaling that I had 10 minutes left in my session. The ringing startled me, but it was enough to snap me out of my frozen state. In a blind panic, I ran towards the door, making sure not to look at her, and I bolted out of the room. As soon as I was safely down the hall, I glanced back, quickly, expecting to see her face, because I was in a position where I could see her profile, side on. But all I saw was the back of her head. She was still facing away from me. It was disturbing, to say the least. When I got to the front desk, the staff seemed like they already knew. They apologized profusely and did not charge me for the session. The girl at the counter I spoke to before even said in a hushed voice, possibly so that her manager couldn't hear, "We don't use that room anymore unless it's really busy. Sorry, please come again sometime." Needless to say, I'm never going back there. Oh, and one more creepy detail. On the way home, I realized that besides the fields and the mountains outside that window, there was a massive cemetery just off to the side. I was seriously freaked out, and I guess I'm kind of glad that this happened during the day, because I don't think I could have handled that at night. So this happened when I was working part-time at a karaoke, just outside of town. It wasn't exactly bustling with business on weeknights, especially towards the end of my shift late at night. Most nights there weren't any customers after 2 a.m, and that night was no different because we're in the suburbs. The last group left at around 2 a.m, and I was left alone. All the closing duties were pretty much done, so I was just killing time until I could clock out. Out of nowhere, the call button from one of the karaoke rooms started ringing. In our karaoke, we have this panel that lit up to show which room the call was coming from, and each room had its number clearly displayed. But when I looked, the panel was flashing in the bottom right-hand corner, a spot where no room number existed. There was no customer karaoke room there. I just stood there frozen, staring at it. It rang for about 30 seconds before stopping on its own. I was already freaked out, but I tried to brush it off and went back to cleaning up the kitchen area, hoping to distract myself. Just as I was getting into the cleaning, I heard a deep male voice, loud and clear, coming from the empty reception area. That was it. I was on the verge of tears at that point. A few days later, I told the manager about what happened, trying to pass it off as a joke, but he took it surprisingly seriously and said that other people had experienced strange things too. Some workers even refused to enter room 11. He didn't give the details, but it was common knowledge that the floor in that room was warped, like it had flooded at some point, which made it hard to mop. There were other creepy things that happened there too. Some nights I'd hear scratching noises coming from the empty rooms, like someone was clawing at the walls. The automatic doors at the entrance would randomly open and close, even when no one was around. It got so bad that customers started calling the place the haunted karaoke. The most terrifying thing that happened to a new girl who had started working the night shifts with one of the staff. She was working the late shift when she heard footsteps, like someone was running around in the storage room at the back of the first floor. Now that room was always locked. The girl broke down crying, too scared to continue working. She quit the next day. Even the manager thought things were getting out of hand. He called in a Shinto priest to perform a kind of exorcism. They put salt and talismans in the storage room, turning it into a no-go zone. After that, things seemed to calm down, and we didn't really have any more strange incidents. On my last shift, the manager and I were reminiscing about all the crazy stuff that happened. We started talking about the hauntings, and I jokingly said, "Man, that night was so terrifying, I almost quit on the spot." He smiled and said, "Well, I'm glad you didn't. If you had quit, I'd be the only one left to cover those night shifts." We kept chatting, but then the manager got a little serious. He leaned in and said, "I never told you this before, but the guy who managed this place before me, he died. Right outside." I laughed it off, thinking he was messing with me again. "Come on. Don't tell all the new hires stuff like that. You're never going to have anyone working the night shift. You're going to scare them off before they even start." He was always the type to joke around, so I didn't think much of it. But now looking back on it, I'm not sure if he was joking after all. This happened about 10 years ago, when I was still a student, working a night shift at a karaoke spot. I really wanted to save up money, so I signed up for a 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. shifts. Yeah, it was rough, but I was young, and I needed the cash. The night shift crew was unique, to say the least. A lot of them were people you'd rather not get so close to. They had this weird energy, you know? Not so friendly, a little close-guarded. I thought, okay, whatever, so I kept my distance, and I just got on with my work. Now here's where the story takes a dark turn. One of the girls who worked the earlier shifts actually took her own life. From what I heard, she had some issues with depression, and one night she just couldn't take it anymore. After getting some nasty complaints from drunk customers, she jumped to her death. That's when things started happening, especially during the night shifts, my shifts. After 3 a.m., the place would be pretty much deserted, and I'd be the only one working. It was eerie. One night, something happened that really freaked me out. There weren't any customers, so I played one of my favorite CDs over the store's PA system, just to get a break from the lobby music. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the music changed. Some creepy song from a Visual Kei band started playing instead. The tempo was all messed up. It would speed up, then it would slow down. I thought it was a technical glitch, so I stopped the CD. But the music kept playing. I unplugged the system, and the music still played. The sound was now coming from the farthest karaoke room. It wasn't just the music though. I could hear someone, or something, kind of whispering along to the song. That was it for me. I bolted out of the building. As I ran, the lights started flickering like crazy, on and off, on and off. Eventually it stopped, but I was too freaked out to go back inside. I waited outside until my shift came to an end, and the morning shift worker came to take over. That wasn't the only thing that happened after she died. Weird things kept happening during my shifts. I did hear voices coming from the storage room calling out, "Hey, come here." Objects would move by themselves. One time I even felt someone tap me on the shoulder, but when I turned around, there was no one there. It was almost too much. A lot of the night shift workers started quitting. It got so bad that the manager had to start working with us during the night shifts, just to keep an eye on things. I remember one night, the two of us were cleaning up a room and he suddenly screamed and ran towards me. I've never seen anyone that terrified. When he got close, he yelled, "She's here." Before I could even process what he said, the phone rang. It was a call from one of the rooms, the same room where the manager had seen whatever it was. The manager was shaking, too scared to even speak. We grabbed our things and ran out of the building. right there in the parking lot. The manager said he was quitting, and honestly, I didn't blame him. The karaoke bar doesn't exist anymore. It was tore down and replaced with some new stores. I wonder if these new tenants have any idea what went down in that place. And I hope, for their sake, they're not experiencing the same things we did. I first met him through a dating app. He wasn't really my type, but we shared some common interests, photography and music. It seemed harmless enough to meet up. And I thought, maybe if things went well, we could at least be friends. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just some casual conversation, so with no expectations, I agreed to meet him for dinner. When we finally met in person, things didn't quite go as I'd hoped. Despite our shared hobbies, the conversation felt stilted. We didn't even like the same genres of music, which I found odd because that was supposed to be our common ground. I could barely keep the conversation going, in all honesty, and I resorted to plastering a fake smile on my face, pretending to be interested. We had dinner at a nice restaurant, and afterwards, he suggested we grab a drink at a bar nearby. He paid for everything, and even offered to drive me home. On the surface, it seemed polite enough, but the entire time I felt like something was off. After dropping me off, I breathed a sigh of relief. The night had been dull, but at least it was over. Or so I thought. The next day, I started receiving messages from him. At first, they were polite, just checking in to see how I was doing, suggesting we hang out again soon, stuff like that. But as the days passed, the texts became more frequent. He was always suggesting places for us to go, trying to lock in plans. I didn't want to lead him on, so after about a week I decided to be direct and told him that I didn't feel any romantic connection with him. To my surprise, he took the news well, or at least pretended to. "No problem at all," he replied, saying that he'd sensed that already, and there was no need to worry. After that, I thought the matter was closed. I assumed he'd move on, and I wouldn't hear from him again, but I was wrong. A few days later, I was scrolling through Instagram when I noticed something strange. He had posted a story of himself at a restaurant I had mentioned during our date, one of my favorite places to eat. At first, I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But then the posts kept coming. Every day it seemed like he was visiting another one of my usual hangouts. Bars, cafes, even places near my apartment. I started to feel uneasy. Why was he frequenting all these spots I had told him about? The worst part was his captions. One read, "She's not here today," as if he'd been expecting to run into me. My stomach dropped when I read that. Things took a darker turn a few weeks later. A mutual friend of mine, a girl who didn't know him, messaged me saying she was planning to do karaoke with him and wanted to know if I'd join them. I was horrified that he had managed to track down one of my friends, probably through social media, and now he was using her to get closer to me. It felt like a deliberate move, calculated and creepy. I declined the invitation, using some lame excuse about feeling under the weather. The very next day he was texting me again, but this time his messages were unnerving. He acted overly concerned about my health, offering to take me to the doctor, cook me meals, or even run a bath for me. Each new message made my skin crawl. I didn't reply, hoping he'd get the hint and leave me alone, but when I didn't respond, he'd switch to Instagram, bombarding me with DMs. Asking if I was okay, why wasn't I answering, if I needed anything. It was relentless, it was almost too much. Then one evening after work, I came home to find something chilling. A plastic bag was hanging on the railing outside of my apartment door. Inside was a small stuffed animal and a handwritten note. My heart raced as I pulled it out. I instantly knew it was from him. Despite living in a secure building with an auto-lock system, he had somehow managed to get in. The note inside read, "I've been thinking about you all the time." The stuffed animal felt strange in my hands. When I squeezed it, I noticed something hard inside. Curious, I cut it open, and to my horror, there was a small device tucked inside the stuffing. I showed it to a friend, and they confirmed my worst fear. It was likely a hidden camera or a recording device. That was the breaking point for me. The dating app, the casual meetings, everything I had once thought was harmless now felt dangerous. Since then, I've avoided meeting new people through dating apps altogether. I can't shake the paranoia. What started as a casual encounter turned into a nightmare, and even now, I can't help but look over my shoulder, wondering if he's still out there, watching.